Churches podcast. I'm Jeff Metters. I'm joined today with Noah Oldham, Tony Merida, and Patrick Schreiner. And we're wrapping up this season through the book of Acts, looking at church planting and learning church planting from the early church. And we need to wrap up this season with this episode on something that is kind of forgotten, that can be overlooked. We got all excited about pastoring and planting and all that, but sometimes planters forget, oh, I'm a pastor too. That I'm not just a planter, I'm not just a starter. I need to shepherd the plant that we are engaged in this city. And so I want to begin with this text, and then I want to start with the icebreaker question. But in Acts 20, we read this from the Apostle Paul. He's meeting with the Ephesian elders, Acts 20, 28 through 35. This is what Paul says. Pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them. Therefore be alert, remembering that for 3 years I did not cease night or day to admonish everyone with tears. And now I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you the inheritance among all those who are sanctified. I coveted no one's silver or gold or apparel. You yourselves know that these hands ministered to my necessities and to those who are with me. Final verse. And all these things I have shown you, that by working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Guys, what is one piece of pastoral advice that you've heard at some point that has really just stuck with you and you'll never forget? Noah?
Yeah, I think the earliest days, it was two-part for me. One of my mentors is also my uncle, one of the pastors of the church that I started my pastoral ministry in, and he said two things. You can't shepherd people you don't love, and you can't shepherd people that you're afraid of. Both of those pieces, so necessary, I've learned throughout the years.
I'll go Spurgeon real quick. I mean, he wasn't talking to me while he was alive, but the lectures to my students, the first one, the minister's self-watch, he's kind of teasing out Acts 20, pay attention to yourself and to the flock, and 1 Timothy 4:16, watch your life and doctrine. That whole lecture, just in general, it's like life and doctrine so encapsulate pastoral ministry. If I don't watch my life, I don't have a ministry, you know. And my job is to feed the flock, to watch my doctrine. And so I've had a number of mentors just through their own, lectures, interactions. I feel like all the advice I've received in many ways could be funneled into those categories in that verse, watch your life and doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, one of my mentors in DC, Mark Dever, always says just 4 words, preach, pray, love, stay. And I love that because it's 4 words. I can remember it. And I do think it encapsulates like what ministry is about: preaching, praying, loving, and staying. And it's just, it's kind of like no nonsense. It's kind of long suffering. And so I think as I think through church planting or pastoring, those words, it's like a ballast to me. It just helps me like keep focused on like, what are we actually doing here? I think that those 4 things encapsulate it well.
Yeah, it's so good. And it really sets up what's happening here, I think, in Acts 20. So Paul's meeting with the Ephesian elders. He recognizes, I'm not going to see these guys again. And they're all praying and crying about what Paul says, I'm not going to see you again. And he admonishes them really kind of with this charge that we should remember for the rest of our lives. This is a piece of pastoral advice that should be ringing in every planter and every pastor's ears, where he tells them, pay careful attention to yourselves. And look what he says, and to all the flock, to care for the church of God. I think the first instructive word there is all the flock. It's very easy to care for some of the flock and the flock that loves you, but for all. So we don't have time. Maybe we'll get to that. But what are some things that you would encourage church planters with that you got to stay focused on shepherding? Because as planters, I mean, they are entrepreneurial, they have practical leadership skills, they want to reach and equip people and disciple them. But these elements of pastoral care, Tony, what are some of the things that you would encourage a planter with, how they can stay focused and actually care for the flock of God that's among them?
Yeah, well, for starters, we're underscoring it in this podcast, is that to be a church planter usually implies that you're also going to be the pastor of this particular church. I think there is a model of church planting where you may be a starter, move on, start more. usually the guys who at least come through our network and through my relationships are those who stay there to pastor that church, right? And it really, that pastoral care happens immediately. Like in your core team, you're going to have conflict like immediately. So like it's not that you wait until you get a building and then you start pastoring. Like it's pretty much from the beginning, you're shepherding. And so I would say in addition to that, just having a model for what pastoral care is really important. Our church uses Tim Whitmer's book, Shepherd Leader, in our residency and so on. And he just has some really helpful categories, and we've made some tweaks here and there through the years. But those categories are knowing the sheep, leading the sheep, protecting the sheep, and feeding the sheep. And we do those 4 things at a macro and micro level.
Okay.
Right? So knowing the sheep, you know, like the role, you know who you're accountable for. That's macro. And a micro, it's more of the relational component, right? Leading the sheep, you're a vision caster, like where are we going, that kind of thing. But then you're also leading at a micro level with more relational counseling, discipling, that kind of thing. Protecting the sheep happens at macro as you preach, and you're protecting the folks from false teaching. You may put church discipline in that category as well. Again, protecting is happening more micro. Those categories, macro, micro, are helpful for us because we think about elders, and some elders are going to be more macro level pastors, and some are going to be more micro. Some will do a little of both, right? And then the final one is feed the sheep. Obviously, we're preaching, but we're also doing kind of one-on-one discipleship. And so there's a lot you can kind of put into those buckets that to tease that out, but having some kind of model doesn't have to be this model that I'm laying out, but having some category for what does it even mean to oversee a group of people, and how do I go about doing that is really important.
Yeah. Well, Noah, from that, are there any obviously you have a lot of years pastoring, you have a lot of experience pastoring, now serving and leading in Sin Network in the overcare. Yeah. I think there are some practical ways to kind of launch off of Tony's. Like, I'm sure every planter's got their system, every pastor's got. What have you seen? Some kind of these micro, kind of on the ground ways of knowing and caring for sheep?
Well, I think first and foremost, one of the things that gets overlooked with church plants because they're brand new and they just hit the ground running is you have to have a robust membership process. Yeah. What answers the question, who am I responsible for and who am I responsible to? If you don't have that, then you're never able to care for the sheep that God has called you to, those who are among you. And so I think that developing a robust process, and I believe in a 4-part process I think is helpful but simple enough for even the earliest church plant to do this, even in the core team phase. First is a class, be able to share the mission, vision, values, and beliefs so that people are saying, this is what I'm signing up for. This is what we're agreeing on together. After the class, having a covenant, that this is what the elders are covenanting to do for you and with you, and this is what you are covenanting back to the elders and to the other members. After the covenant, there's a conversation, a pastoral interview. This is where, when you get larger especially, you get to know not just the macro level, but the micro level. Tell me your story. Tell me your spiritual gifts. Tell me how you see God using you in this church. And then praying for them and answering questions individually. And then after that, I think there's a community commitment. You're inducted into the family, and so that others can see, we're in this together. I'm responsible for them. They're responsible for me, because we see these one another's. There's things that the elders, the shepherds have to do, but the shepherd's job gets easier when everyone else in the church is doing the things, the one another's that Christ calls us to. We don't feel like we have to carry everything, but we carry the things that only we can carry. So that robust membership process, I think, that is primary, foundational.
Yeah, and you've written a really helpful article at newchurches.com on some of the stuff that I think guys should go check out. Just search Noah's name. We'll put it in the show notes to go listen to that. Go read that. Patrick, you're an elder at a church plant there in Kansas City at Emmaus. And so what are some of the things that you guys do to kind of have proactive member care there in Kansas City?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what these brothers have said. I think one of the things I immediately thought of is, especially at the start, having a rule of faith and a rule of life, what we sometimes call a statement of faith and a church covenant, as Noah mentioned, is super important, because you have to really speak to people about what are they joining, what do we believe here at this church, what are we pledging that we actually confess as a church, because that really forms your identity as a church. If you don't have grounding in theology and what you believe about the Bible, about God, about creation, about the end times, things like that, then you really are up to really the waves and winds of whatever comes. And then you're also pledging yourself to one another. You're saying, hey,
Right.
like, we are going to pledge ourselves to one another. So we actually read our church covenant every members meeting just to remind each other. We're going to pray for one
great
another.
idea.
We're going to care for one another. We're going to give to one another, because there is a certain covenant relationship that we're actually making with one another. My relationship to those in my church is different than my relationship to other Christians. I love all Christians, but I've actually committed myself to a local church
Yeah.
and these body of believers. And so then as you step into the church, what we found is so helpful is, something like community groups where you get together and you just do the one another's, where you love one another, you get to know one another, depending on the size of your church. I find it so helpful just to get people together, whether that's eating a meal, and just get to know one another, share each other's stories. Often we start with just getting to know one another by say, let's tell me your story. And we try to get really vulnerable in those stories where we talk about what the Lord has done in our life, what we're struggling with, and we really get to know each other at a deeper
Yeah.
level, so it's not just surface level conversation.
That's good. One of the things that we did is we would have a Google sheet shared amongst all the elders, or you could have this amongst your church planning team, kind of your committed leaders. And we had the names of everybody in membership, everybody that was, committed, and what group they were in, if they were in a small group. And then we had tabs for each elder's name at the bottom. And we had, did you call them this month? Did you text them? Like any notes.
Yeah.
So we did that every month, every quarter, just so we could make sure, like, are we keeping up with the people? Do we know what's going on? And that just proactive, scheduled, because there are so many emergencies, there are so many needs, things pop up. And to have that proactive, because there are some church members,
Yeah.
they're just faithful.
Yeah.
They're not causing noise.
Yep.
They serve quietly. They just are wonderful people that they could fall through the cracks
Yep.
if you don't proactively go and care for them.
That's so good, Jeff. I feel like that's one of the failures in my pastoral ministry is being so reactive and not being proactive enough. Because it's very easy with all the problems and challenges that you have, is you're always responding to problems. You're always reacting to things. When you've got faithful Jim over here,
Right.
you ought to go spend an hour with him.
You'd be so refreshed.
Yeah,
Not leaving that meeting too.
so I've later in ministry, I've tried to do more and more of that. So I'll just add one component here, and that is for those who haven't planted yet, who are watching this podcast, you can't do all of the preparation right now. A lot of it's boots on the ground, but as much as you can right now, I would be preparing for criticism. Like read everything you can, because you're going to get a lot. The rest of your life, you'll be criticized.
Yes.
Managing conflict. Prepare as many sermons in advance as you can, at least the exegesis and structure, take the preparation time seriously. Like get a good theology of suffering, have some go-to psalms that you can just recite, minister to people who are hurting in a hospital, really make the most of the prep time. Because when you hit the ground running, you can just have some stuff already. Fortunately, I wasn't even thinking like this, but I just took a ton of classes in the Bible in seminary, did a lot of preaching ahead of time, and I added a lot of material by the time I was actually pastoring, and I'm really grateful that I did, because my hours got ate up so quickly. But the areas like criticism and conflict, I didn't take seriously enough, and I found myself scrambling at times, or calling older pastors, how do you handle this? And so I would just really, take those categories seriously when you're thinking about planting.
Yeah, it's like I don't think anybody could probably I don't think we just have the right estimation of how difficult it's going to be.
Sure.
Because we're excited, we want to reach people and disciple people, and then, man, it's challenging all across the board. And one reason why it also gets so challenging is what Paul says in Acts 20, is that fierce wolves are also going to come in among us. And so, Patrick, maybe kind of set the scene for us as you've studied Acts and what's going on in Ephesus. Does Paul have anything in mind, maybe in particular? I know he's talking about they're going to draw disciples away, but is there anything particular in Ephesus that Paul could be referencing that the Ephesian elders need to be on guard against?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in Ephesus if you read the narrative in terms of idolatry and magical practices. And so there's a danger of syncretism, where you combine kind of what you believed before about the gods of this world and idols, and you begin to bring that into Christian doctrine and therefore corrupt it.
Right.
And so I think he's nervous about wolves coming in who might have the veneer that this looks Christian, but it's twisted in some way. And then you look throughout the rest of the New Testament, I think you see some of the issues that come up in terms of false teaching. You see false teaching in terms of denying God's judgment, which is to come. You see a lot of this in Jude. You see people following their ungodly passions. So whenever you see sexual immorality, actually, that's a clear sign of some sort of false teaching. There's also people who create divisions, Jude says. That's also a sign that there might be false teaching involved. So as shepherds, I mean, you think back to this imagery of shepherding. David was a shepherd who had these bears and these lions come trying to eat the sheep, and he's the one to stand up and protect them. He's the one to kind of take the sling and drive these people away because they're going to destroy the flock. And so really, I think what Paul's saying is he's using this imagery to say, like, you are on the front line of protecting people because people will come in and they will want to cause divisions. They will want to lead people towards their own desires. And I think as pastors, I think a lot of times, at least I even think about this, like that this is something in the past. Like, okay, there was false teachers in the past. Now, people are nice. That's not going to happen here. Most of the New Testament letters are about false teachers in some form coming into the church, and that continues today.
Absolutely.
What are some things that you guys have seen as you've been pastoring? So you've been in St. Louis. You've been Raleigh, Kansas City. I mean, you guys have had ministry all over the place. You've been in other cities too. As you look over your history, what are some of the wolves, the wolf-ish, wolf-type moments where you've had to step in as a lead pastor, as an elder, and say, we have to confront this? And how'd you go about it? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, there's three for me that come to mind. I similar to what Patrick's already shared, but I think doctrine is the number one wolf we're going to see every single time. But it's connected to so many things. Secondly is disunity, and thirdly is discouragement. I think discouragement is a wolf as well. Here's why I believe this. If we have bad doctrine, it's going to kill worship. And you kill worship, the church is practically not able to function because it's no longer under the headship of Christ. Disunity is going to kill momentum because we see in Ephesians that when every part is doing their job, we're working together in unity, there's going to be a building up of itself. You kill that unity, you kill momentum. And then thirdly, discouragement because it kills mission. Think about it. The number one reason people don't ever invite somebody to their church is like, it's weird here. I'm discouraged by what's going on here. But we're encouraged by what the Lord is doing. Like we're inviting, we're living on mission. So Satan knows that those are the kind of things, the wolves he can send. And I think about this text often because, just a plug here, I know you like to work out. I imagine you listen to loud music, but you might not be. But there's a Christian metal band called Wolves at the Gate, and they scream and sing about Scripture. So check them out. Remind you of Ephesians, the Ephesian church, Acts chapter 20.
I appreciate you mentioning that I work out.
We can tell.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, like the things you're highlighting. I mean, Paul is saying they're not sparing the flock. Which is a very if you wonder what is the wolf doing here? Killing, seeking to devour, destroy. And they're drawing them away from the church amongst themselves, speaking twisted things to draw away disciples after them. So, I mean, you're hitting all those things. The doctrine, speaking twisted things, not sparing the flock, the discouragement. But Tony, what are some things that you've seen in Raleigh?
That's a great list that he just gave. My categories that I thought about were simply legalism and license. So license, that's 1 Corinthians, that's Thyatira, Pergamum, where sin that has been normalized in the culture is easily tolerated in the church. And we've got to be on guard against that. So there's a lot, and that's a really aggressive movement right now in really all over parts of the Western world, but where I'm at in Raleigh for sure. And then legalism, the idea of adding to the gospel. So it's not enough that you believe the gospel, that you need to think a certain way about this political issue, or you need to think this way about education, or just go down the list. And it's fine to have these positions, obviously, and it's fine to even talk about these things, but it's when those things become divisive, it's when those things create sideways energy that distracts from the mission of the church. So a lot of that has to be taught in membership class. I think that's one of the places where we try to safeguard this. And the other is just, championing the gospel week in and week out, in order for people to say, hey, this is the main thing. I love how Paul says in Philippians, to write the same things to you is no trouble to me and is safe for you. To say the same gospel. Every church should be a same things church, right? it is not only good for unbelievers, but it also is a protection. It's safe for people to shield them from false gospels. So I think Galatians is a classical book of adding to Jesus plus. That was the first book we preached through in our church because I thought, well, here's a church plant in a city, even though Raleigh is a very diverse, very liberal city, it's still got a lot of churched people that will likely be wandering into our church. And one thing I've learned about church plants is you attract all kinds of people that have all kinds of beliefs. But I just wanted to clarify what the gospel is and what it is not. And so I was like, let's just do Galatians. And so our first sermon series was creatively called Galatians. Man,
that marketing budget you had. Patrick, what about any like Kansas City, and you guys can each add maybe just like bullet points, any like particular doctrines like, man, it was this, or this is something we've had to stand up against. Anything that you've like, this was a danger to the church that you've experienced. Or maybe there's not. Like, man, I can't think of anything particular, but just false stuff. Maybe it's legalism, kind of like Tony's had.
I've had, maybe this doesn't answer your question, but I've had more experiences with division. And division is super hard because it's fine for people to disagree with you. It's fine for people to critique you. But it can enter into a space where it becomes destructive and eroding of the unity of the church, and it begins to call into question like the godliness or the leadership of the church, to where trust is being eroded away under kind of people's feet. And so that one is so hard because really a lot of the times when you face division, it's people that you love, that you've cared for, that you've prayed for, and you really want to like love them and say, hey, we've got to stop doing this. But when you come to them and you keep saying that and it just keeps happening over and over again, at some point it does become divisive in the sense of like this can't continue anymore. And so that one I feel like is so hard because there is somewhat of a gray area when you enter into that where like, is this just disagreement? Is this okay? But then I think it enters into a new phase sometimes.
Because you can tell by the effects it's causing. Like, okay, disagreeing with your leaders, disagreeing with the church. Okay, I get that happens. But then how that disagreement's handled, you're right. Tony, kind of same doctrines.
Yeah. I mean, division is difficult. My early church, it was a kind of a mixed bag theologically of people's backgrounds given the history of the church. But there was a certain portion of people that I loved, that really loved the Bible too. But they were very dogmatic about a particular end time view that that became a little bit wearisome to me. I would get newspaper clippings from Israel, and stuff like that given to me all the time. And
they in Hebrew too?
I was like, okay. So anyway, I think certain churches, you're going to face different challenges. If you're planting a church on a university campus,
the context is going to lead a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think planters, the reason why we're just keep going into this is if you're not thinking about it, man, you're going to be blindsided. And you're going to have kind of the Pollyanna dream. This is all going to be great sound of music, dancing out in the field. Like, well, this is going to be really hard. You are in a battle. The imagery of wolves coming towards you is meant to show you this is not always going to be pleasant. This is not always going to be easy. And I love what Paul says in Acts 20:24, if we back up a little bit, where he kind of casts this vision that describes kind of what his vision for his life is. And I think that's why we see Paul sacrifice so much, why we see him go to church after church, plant after plant, and enduring the beatings, during the shipwrecks, the sleepless nights, all that kinds of stuff is Acts 20:24, where he says, "But I do not account my life of any value, nor as precious to myself, if only I may finish my course in the ministry that I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the gospel of the grace of God." That's a life verse for guys who are just laboring out there in urban centers, laboring in rural places. I mean, this church planting stuff. And so how can guys take a scripture like this, take the gospel of the grace of God and the vision to testify of it, and have that kind of give them this enduring sense of pastoral ministry and to exist and to endure and thrive under these unique pressures of planting and pastoring?
Yeah, I used to think that having the life verse was kind of corny. I kind of grew up adjacent to the church. Mom took us. My dad wasn't a believer most of my life. And so I kind of had both of these worlds. Like, I'm in the church, but church is really corny to me until I got saved. And then I realized what God did in those first several years of following him, but also then ministry, is he said, okay, you think it's corny, I'll give you 3. And so what God did is God gave me a kind of a combination, an equation, if you will. So Luke 10:2. The harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. So pray and raise up harvesters. Jude 3, contend for the faith once for all, delivered to the saints. So that 2 Thessalonians 3:1 will happen. The word of the Lord may run swiftly and win the race. And so the way I like to say it is, my calling is to pray, to send, and to contend. And as I do that, I realize that was what God was shaping in me in that 15 years of church planting, and now stepping into another role. That's what it's the same calling. It's just now operating in a different sphere. And so if guys can have that in those moments of questioning, those moments of prayerful consideration, is God opening a door or closing a door? If you're able to lean back on what the Lord has put in you for your life,
right,
you never have to walk in doubt.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, I think one, just underscoring, man, it's not just about starting, it's about finishing. We have a lot of people that start, not a lot of people that finish. So the question is, like, how can I finish well? And I think there's some spiritual answers, like gospel answers to that, of your own devotion to the Lord, your prayer life. I think your marriage, assuming you're married, is just critical, and that like you enjoy being married. And not forgetting that you're a human being also, and you're not a machine. You're not a content producer, right? So that means get some hobbies. That means take a nap. It means, I think I recommend getting a dog. That dog is loyal. Okay. No matter what happens in ministry, that dog is happy to see me. And like these little things help me remember that I'm a regular guy, and my life doesn't it doesn't rise and fall on success in ministry. Like, my identity is in the gospel. And so I think a book like Ecclesiastes is really beneficial in helping us see the man, find joy in your food, in your work, in your wife. Don't take yourself so seriously. And I think I see guys burning out and not finishing when it is all about ministry success, certain expectations that they've placed or people have placed on them, and when they don't meet them, they're crushed, and their sermon isn't great. They're just driven to despair. We need to do everything we can to fight against that. Enjoy the rhythms of rest, taking a retreat, making sure you work hard. Because a lot of guys I hear talking these days, I wonder if they're even working, because they're talking about taking a sabbatical.
Like you're 2 months in. Yeah, like, what are you doing? Yeah.
But assuming you're laboring, definitely. Yeah. And then, asking your wife, like, how am I doing? Do I look stressed? So Kimberly's been the greatest source of ongoing encouragement to me in 21 years of marriage, of being able to tell me when we need to do certain things or dial it back or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember asking my wife, be like, "Do I seem more agitated? Am I more impatient right now? Like, especially like with the kids and the younger years and all that. Like, I don't want to be like that. Like, am I?" She's like, "You're doing okay." She's like, "But I'm glad you're noticing." Like,
I literally just asked Kimberly yesterday, because someone told me this. They said, "You need to get some rest. You look stressed." And I asked her, "Do I look stressed?" So,
And how'd she answer? No, I'm just kidding.
No, well, it was.
You don't have to answer that right now.
Right?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as Tony. There's a healthy way to do this and probably an unhealthy way to do this. And what I love about the healthy way of doing this is Paul is following his Savior in this, because God so loved the world that he sent his only son, and he sacrificed everything for us. And so Paul, he says he has a purpose. My purpose is to finish my course, this ministry. I have a purpose in my life, and this is the driving passion of my life, to do this work. And I think you have to have some sense of, this is the purpose, this is what I'm called to, this is what God is calling me to. But Paul also says later on, as we read in verse 28, I need to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. We're not purchasing this church. This is God's church. We're under shepherds. So he purchased this church. We just get to be errand boys for Jesus, right? Like we get to deliver the goods of Jesus to others. And if we, as Tony said, if we don't rest, if we don't take a break sometimes, we're not going to be able to finish that race in the same way. And so we want to be sacrificial with how we use our time, with how we use our finances, with how we use our resources, but it should never be to the extent where we're going to burn out and actually hurt people along the way. Because if we become unhealthy ourselves, we're going to hurt people.
As you were talking, Patrick, I've never thought about this other text from Paul, connecting them to Philippians 2. Where Christ him, where he humbled himself to the point of death, even death on a cross, that he took on the form of a servant, where Paul says, I don't consider my life as precious to myself. That kind of I'm laying down my life for the church, where Jesus literally laid down his life and shed his blood for us. That, man, we've signed up to be his servants and to pick up the cross and follow him. And be fishers of men.
First Thessalonians 2, I thought of as well. He shares the gospel with them, but also his very own self. Like he's like, I'm not just here to deliver content. I actually have my whole being to give to you. And I think that's such a great vision of pastoral ministry, that you're actually giving yourself to them in some form. You're not just, like Tony said, a content producer.
Right.
You're actually giving them your whole being.
Because AI could just give people content, but AI cannot, hopefully, can live among us. I don't know when you're watching this what year it is, what's happened with the machines, but they can't really incarnate and be among us. And Patrick, it's exactly what Paul says in Acts 20, as he kind of begins his whole Acts 20 verse 18, as he begins this speech to them. He tells them in verse 18, you yourselves know how I lived among you the whole time from the first day that I set foot in Asia, serving the Lord with all humility and the tears and the trials that happened to me. And so, he's just living among them, just like he did with the Christians at Thessalonica. So as you think about for pastors and planters, this can be a challenge sometimes to live among the people they're shepherding. You hear a lot of counsel about how to interact with the sheep and where to find your friends. Is it in the church? Is it outside the church? Can you even work with friends? On and on. There's lots of advice that gets given. So how can planters, and maybe you guys share just from your own personal experiences, you've been elders and pastors and planters, how you develop and cultivate personal relationships with people that you are pastoring?
Yeah, I think it starts with having a very biblical ecclesiology, especially when it comes to offices. I am not my church's apostle.
Right.
I'm a shepherd. And as a shepherd, I'm called to shepherd the flock of God that is among me. And so if I am not with the people, and I'm not shepherding the people, then I'm no longer their shepherd. I've become something else. And I think that a church planter dreams of the days when he has this big church, but the challenge when he gets there is how can he shepherd them? And so he starts to pull away and lead systems, and he gets further and further away from shepherding. When the church establishes more and more, and then you have other men that are shepherding, he feels disconnected, and there becomes this disconnect we've seen turn into explosions for so many pastors and so many planters because they're no longer shepherding. And so I think that ecclesiology starts there, but it's not just for me and my team, it's also for the members. They need to know that. They need to know that I am a shepherd, I'm not the apostle, so they don't always need me. There's a plurality of leaders, and they can go to one of the others so that I can live in those moments of rest as well.
That's good.
Yeah, I think, the priority is to shepherd the flock of God that is among me. That's my calling. I'm going to give an account for the people that I oversee. Having a friendship with people is a little bit more complex. And it isn't the priority of my life. It would be unrealistic to think I can be best friends with everybody in the church.
Right.
Just the same way it would be unrealistic to think every member could be equally as close to all the members.
It's a good distinction.
It's not going to happen. So I think that circle of really close friends is probably going to be small. And it may be on your team, your leadership team. It may not be on your team. I think sometimes that depends on your context and your season of life and all those things. But the priority is to love the flock. And where it gets really difficult, I think, is when you do develop friendships with members, and for whatever reason they end up leaving your church.
It's tough,
right?
It's tough.
Then it you don't want to put a wall up after that and say, I'm never going to be close friends with another church member. But it is something that is difficult, and I think my point is, you're probably going to have a small circle of close friends, and that's great. Thank God for them, you know. But the priority, again, is to shepherd the whole flock that is among us as best we can. I mean, the larger the church, we've got to divide it up. We've got to organize. We've got to use all the elders. Even then, you're not going to know all the members the same way you're going to know maybe your 2 or 3 small groups that you're overseeing.
That's good.
So, I don't know. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, because he's saying, I lived among you. So I think there is that point of, do not be distant from them. That'd be so disconnected from them. You don't know anything that's going on. You don't have anyone over at your house ever. Like just some kind of like strange habits that planters and pastors can form.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember the phrase. So you guys help me out if I'm butchering it. But it talks about kind of like these different levels. Like you want to be honest with everyone, transparent with everyone, or maybe with all, but as much as you can be, but then vulnerable with a few. That kind of, as you get tighter into those circles, like, man, I can't be just vulnerable with every single person that I ever meet, but I should be honest with everyone. And I should be transparent with those in my care and all that kind of stuff. But man, vulnerable. I think there's some wisdom there. Patrick, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember as a pastor, you're also a member, and maybe you're a member first is a good way to think of that. And you need the means of grace through the body of Christ, just like every other member needs it. And that includes relationships. And so many pastors, and we've seen so many pastors fall out of ministry because they shut the door and didn't let anybody in. And so you need those relationships. And the relationships can be complicated because you are a leader. We understand that. What's been helpful for me, and every context is different, but to have some relationships in the church where they don't view you first as the pastor, but as their friend. And that doesn't mean they don't view you as the pastor at all, but they address you like you're a friend, and they can approach you about things. They know your struggles. And typically that's going to be a smaller group of people, but they're willing to speak into your life in a way that maybe other members aren't able to, just because they don't know you as well. And again, that can be on the leadership team, that can be outside the leadership team, that can be in the church, that can be outside the church. There's no rule in terms of the New Testament or Old Testament of how this works, but I do think it's important to have some relationships where people look at you and you are just a regular old guy. You're not the pastor in the first sense of how they look at you.
That's good. That's so helpful. Like you think about all the circles that a pastor, planter, and that even the 4 of us can be in, and people know us by different names, different things. Like for Tony, I'm sure there's many people that he's Dr. Merida, and that's how they're going to refer to you for the rest of your life. And there's other people, Pastor Tony, Pastor T, Pastor, they're going to call you that. I don't know what other names they call you. And then
the workout guy.
Merida, like, hey, Merida. And then others, just Tony. Like you're just Tony. Dr. Schreiner, T-Bone, Dr. Schreiner, and then Mr. Schreiner or Pastor Schreiner. Does anybody call you Pat? Is it a nickname, or is it just it's always Patrick?
PJ.
Yeah, PJ Schreiner.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then just Patrick. And no, so like all the
titles.
Being among the people, living among them, and just having that long-term view of relationships, connected to these people and connected to Christ. We're connected to Christ together. I don't have any kind of special access or relationship to him. And that's kind of where this text, where we see with Paul and the Ephesian elders, is that I think it says he's with them for 3 years. That's a pretty long time to be there and to not bail just quickly. This is not Paul's pattern. I mean, he's there investing, and they're grieving, crying that they're departing. To have that kind of deep, special relationship, I think is very powerful. And so when you think about church planners who are ready to, man, quick, let's go, fast building, let's keep moving, what encouragement would you give to them to really embrace the slow, patient work of genuine pastoral care and planting a church? Tony, what would you
I would say, man, have some good models. There's a lot of principles that we could talk about here, which are great, but also we need inspiration if we're talking about how to go the distance. Right? How to have a marathon ministry. So guys like Charles Simeon throughout the years has really encouraged me. This is a guy who pastored in Cambridge, I think, for like 54 years, who endured immense suffering from the congregation. Didn't want him to preach, just and was single his whole life. But reading about him, reading about his devotional life and how he got up in the morning and started a fire, and then he stoked his soul, and met with God and loved these people even though they didn't like him for the first 7 years. And he just stayed. these kinds of things just really put ministry in their proper perspective.
Yeah.
Church history is a gift to us that we have these stories of affliction. We're not the first pastor to suffer. We're not the first pastor to endure criticism. So I would say if you're trying to take the long view, which I think is the proper view to take in ministry, is to have some models of endurance that inspire you, instruct you, and there are many out there. That's one of them that's ministered to me through the years. I think it was Simeon Seed's little phrase. It says in Piper's small biography, it's a good place to start. The Roots of Endurance is the name of that biography. Simeon said, "Brothers, we must not mind a little suffering." And when you read about all that he went through, he's really encouraged me through the years.
Yeah, Patrick, anything y'all would add?
Yeah, I mean, as you look at the book of Acts, Paul's just on the move all the time. And as you note, he just stops here for 3 years and he spends time. But I think as you look at his ministry, he's encouraging most of the people he's ministering to, especially elders in the church, stay, love people, be here, pray for them, preach the word. And so, unique people have callings on their life to kind of go. But for most people, they're probably going to be in their local context and they're going to stay and they're going to pastor where they are, and that's going to take time. And so before our elder meetings, we often read this line. I love this line from Zach Eswine, and it just kind of sets the tone for our elder meetings. He says, "Our goal is not as a norm to do large things famously as fast as we can." Mm-hmm. And it's just a reminder to us, like we're not, we want to believe that God will do big things, but we're not like a business. We're a church, and we're trying to shepherd the flock of God, and that's going to take time. Because people, if you're in ministry for any amount of time, it takes time for people to change. It takes time for them to produce fruit. Yeah. And you've really got to be in it for the long haul to watch that fruit grow. And actually, if you plant anything and you wait for a long time and you see that fruit come, or you see something sprout, it's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Even though it took forever.
Yeah. Super rewarding.
It's so rewarding. And so if you can stay and watch people grow over time and think back, man, 10 years ago, remember when you were angry all the time? And look at you now. Look at the patience that the Lord has developed in you. Mm-hmm. Those are beautiful things to see.
Yeah, it's good.
I'd say, by way of encouragement for planters, 1 Peter 5, I think turning that into a prayer. We can read that, and we can use that maybe in a membership meeting or in a teaching on eldership, because we love to talk about our role, and then, hey, all you be submissive to the elders. But I think turning that into a prayer, because without the Lord's help, it's not going to happen. But 3 things. Lord, would you make me an overseer that does so willingly? Would you make me an overseer that does so eagerly? And would you make me an overseer that does to set an example? Because if God is going to transform your city, and you're thinking city and not just church, you need more and more and more laborers, more shepherds for the flock, more churches. And if you could, by God's grace, be an example of long-suffering, long obedience in the same direction, I think that's the kind of stuff that God will use to make movements out of.
Yeah, it's great. It's so helpful. Guys, thank you. So much wisdom you've shared throughout this whole season. Grateful to have you join us here on the New Churches podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this season, going through the book of Acts, learning church planting from the early church. We hope you'll go to newchurches.com and find even more resources and further seasons that we've gone through, books like Titus and others. And go check out the Theology Masterclass that just launched. You'll hear from many sitting here and many others that are going to join us here at newchurches.com. And if you want to learn more about church planting, definitely go to Send Network, where we can show you how to plant a church, prepare you how to plant a church, and then work with your sending church as well. And let's keep planting churches to the ends of the earth. We'll see you next time.